Yeah, hello. Today I want to focus on the gray area of incident response, like I call it the unincident. So, who knows what this is? Does this look familiar to some of you? Yeah, okay. This is Schrödinger's outage. It's the outage that, well, we are not quite sure if it's an incident or not. But just like Schrödinger's cat, which is both alive and dead at the same time until someone opens the box. But we sometimes face situations that exist in the state of uncertainty. So is it an incident? Is it not an incident? Until we open the logs, it's both. So, but here is the real question. How is the cat doing? In other words, what's the actual impact? Is there a risk to reliability and security? Are we learning from what's happening, or are we just like ticking the boxes? So, before we dive deep into the topic of the unincident, a few words about myself. I'm a product lead at Dynatrace, working mainly on reliability and security leadership for how we deliver our product to our customers. But today I'm not here to showcase the Dynatrace product, but more on reflecting my experience of my past history, where I've always been in incident management in the one or the other way in all of the roles. So I'm based in Austria, Vienna, and I'm an SRE by heart. What is the unincident about? It's not a new concept or methodology. If you go out today and forget the term unincident, I'm totally fine with it. Yeah? It should focus us on the ambiguity. So the unincident can be both the undeclared incident, or it can be the declared incident, but it's neglected or debated. So, based on my experience, if you don't have a focus on this gray area, either declared or undeclared, but let's call it the gray area, you could end up in having between 30 and 60% of incidents just not making it into formal tracking. And while this reduces the immediate load on the response teams, that also means we might miss critical opportunities to learn. So let's start with the taxonomy of incidents. How can we make them more tangible? What is it about? So just for the sake of explanations, I use 4 patterns for defining the unincident. The first is the no-CI, the non-critical incident. Those are customer impacting issues that do not meet the threshold to be classified as an incident, but still it can affect user experience. A simple example is there is a performance degradation that does not breach the target, so does not affect your SLO, but it still causes user complaints and dissatisfaction if it's not properly addressed. So you could see that in the SLO burn down rate there, while it does not breach the thresholds, but it's gradually burning down. And if this is not run through a proper incident process or an alternative path, then this can result in a slow response, unclear ownership, scattered discussions, and most relevant thing, missed opportunities to learn from this type of incidents or issues. The second pattern of the unincidents is the NOF incident. What a lovely name, right? NOF. It's not our fault. Not our fault. This type gets escalated as incident, so we have a declared one, but then people start neglecting it. They don't understand, hey, this is not our fault. Why is this an incident? Our service did not break, right? Or the product works like expected. So it's just the customer that screwed something up in their configuration for their organization. And that's the reason why all their users cannot log into their products. Yeah? Those type of things. We'll come to the tactics later on. So the next one is the near miss. Who is familiar with the concept of near misses? Okay, quite many, that's great. Yeah. So to summarize, it's the events that didn't escalate, but only because someone got lucky and a safety mechanism kicked in just in time. So a simple example, a circuit breaker saved the day, but no one was really asking why it was needed at all. Or another example, you have a critical service running in Kubernetes and one pod starts failing its health probe. So Kubernetes restarts it automatically, problem gets auto-remediated, all good, no big user impact, all fine. But the restart masks the underlying issue. That means that could be a memory leak, could be network instability, or the dependency outage. So if that is not investigated, then more pods could begin failing their health probes at the same time. So let's also talk about worst case, leading to cascading restarts, degrading performance, or even a full service outage. So it's important to look into those events. Yeah? It's great that it's auto-remediated, but it's very important to look into those events and derive the right learnings and improvements out of them. And there are great reads out there. I've referenced just one blog post from Loren Hochstein. There are many others on like the whole concept of the near miss and how we can translate that and incorporate that into our SRE daily life. Next to the near miss, there is the fear miss, the fourth pattern. They occur when a potential issue got a premature escalation. That means an incident is raised just in case, because I've seen some crazy warning signals. There could be something wrong, some very blurry signals. Yeah? People start panicking around. But it's not bad to declare an incident. Bad is always the impact, so I'm not judging to declare the incident. But being aware of this pattern means if you see that too often, then this can be a signal of less trust in your processes, in your systems, and your observability. So, and speaking of SpongeBob panicking around, I would rather prefer an incident not to ask what would SpongeBob do, but what would Batwoman or Batman do? Because they investigate, triage, act with precision. And in fear miss scenarios, we often see SpongeBob behavior. Yeah? But what we really need is Batman mindset. Okay, so we have the 4 patterns of the unincident. So I'm sure someone will ask now how to measure that. What are the KPIs for the unincident? Well, like many incident practitioners, I have concerns about how the MTDX metrics are used these days. So I'm a fan of the measurement, but not how the mean time metrics are used. But just for the sake of the game, let's explore another take on the MTDT, and that's the mean time to discuss. If the team spends more time debating on incidents than resolving the issues or troubleshooting the issue, then that's a signal for a cultural smell. So please, let's not make this metric real, but be aware of those signals. Okay, now that we are aware of the 4 patterns of the unincidents, let's explore potential possible tactics. So I would group them bottom line in 3 aspects. One is mindset and cultural shifts, then structure before sentiment, and fact-based or informed decisions. So for all of those unincidents, a very common question is, should this be an incident? Should this really be an incident? Why was it declared? Come on, this is not an incident, don't bother us. Things like that. Yeah? So the most powerful answer to that is, what can we learn? What will we learn? Or more powerful, we will learn out of that. So this is how you can stop endless discussions. Bring people to improve things, not to debate. You cannot change the past, but you can change the future together. Yeah? And another aspect is, I was very often asked can we not simply restrict the permissions to raise an incident to a closed group, like a closed group of SREs, security engineers, or experienced support engineers? Why should anyone in the company being able to raise an incident? Then we need to deal with it, and then you have those types of gray zone events. But I always push back, because it's not bad declaring the incident. Bad is always the impact it has. And let's appreciate people being prudent and make them responsible. It's not a fire and forget. Yeah? You cannot fire an incident, trigger it, because we have an open, let's say, open incident policy, open door policy, open incident policy. But you cannot just fire it and then go away. You need to be part of the response. Means if you have such pattern, bring the people in the bridge call, let them explain the rationale, stay fact-based in the triaging, ask simple questions to decide on your severity, and then if it doesn't qualify your criteria for an incident, also be bold on not just continuing as incident, but taking an alternative path. So this is a very powerful method to not closing down the option to raise incidents, but involve people and making them responsible. During an incident, we are one team. There's one incident response team. There is no org chart. Yeah. So, in thinking of post-mortems, then also later on, let's not blame the decision to declare, because let's discuss that during the post-mortem. Then the discussion comes up during the post-mortem. Why was this an incident? Let's not blame the decision, but rather ask which guidance was missing or alternative escalation path was missing to make that better in the future. Another aspect of staying fact-based is to reduce the reliance of gut feeling for declaring incidents. That means instead of letting people decide what is the issue and the impact, let the machines decide or describe. What are the main pillars you can action is get your observability in shape. That it tells you the impact, that it also tells you the non-impact means it highlights near misses, for example. Hey, there was an event, please be careful, take action upon. And that you get the information at your fingertips that when doing incident decisions. So not only looking at those things that exceed the threshold, but also it's about detecting the subtle performance degradation patterns or degradation patterns, could be performance or anything else, before they escalate. So you should typically see them in the SLO burn down rates. Yeah? So not just acting once the error budget is reached, but also reviewing constantly, getting alerted if there is an anomaly in the burn down. I would like to give you one example how observability with AI-supported incident response can help to not just detect the problem, but also tell you the user impact and the SLO relation. So it shows you here in this example that there's my payment service that had an error rate of 51% and about 1,500 users were impacted. We get the information that a problematic Git commit is to blame, which was deployed via Argo CD. And even further, the recommended action is to roll back the change. So very helpful to make fact-based decision in your incident response, to reduce the reliance on gut feeling. Let's move into the next section, which is all about structure and process. So in my experience, and finally SpongeBob agrees, having a clear structure is absolutely essential in gray zone events. But why? First, it brings clarity. When incidents aren't blue or green, a well-defined process helps us to cut the confusion and to decide how to respond. And second, structure overall improves the mindset. So there is a strong correlation back to the mindset topic that we've touched before. Because it gives team the confidence that there is a reliable way to handle the uncertainty, rather than relying on the gut feeling or having the endless debates. So over the years, I have seen that when teams have a solid process, they are much better equipped to learn from these ambiguous situations rather than just react to them. And speaking of the unincidents, where do you get the signals from when it is the best time to look into the structure? So where do you trigger the, hey, we need to improve something there? It's of course the incident review phase. So let's assume you have a post-incident review process in place, or post-mortem or post-incident analysis, however you call it. And you run your incident through that. But what about the unincidents? How is the correlation here? So for the fear miss and the not our fault events, they are declared incidents, means hopefully you run the same post-incident review for that. But what about those that were not declared? So the no CI and the near miss. I can provide two options, and I'm sure there are many more out there, but that's the experience I would like to share. And one very simple thing is provide people internally in the company an easy way to put them into the same process, because you have a process that works for reviewing incidents, get the near misses and the no CIs under the same process, but you need a trigger for that. Yeah? So in our case, we have an own Jira template, and it's very easy for people to just like raise the request, hey, there was an event, we should kick off the post-incident review. Or another way is using Slack, just tag the incident management group. Hey, we have seen that there, we have discussed it in the Slack discussion. Can we move this discussion out and run a structured review? So a very simple way to kick off the process that is already established in the company. Another way is talking about those things in the regular production status meeting or the quality review meeting or whatever you have in place where you regularly review, this is the state of how production runs. So, because typically there you have on the agenda, these were the incidents that happened, these were the customer impact, this is what we learned out of it. Bring also the near miss and the unincidents on the agenda, because people will love talking about it, and then you can always decide, hey, there is a follow-up, let's kick off the process. There is another important review I would like to talk about, the incident process review. The incident process review helps you to review the efficiency of your response process and derive learnings out of it. Going back to the incident review, as part of, for the individual incidents, you should reflect on how did we respond to the incident, how efficient was the response, and what are learnings also for the process and for the response part, and how can we improve there. But additionally, in the dedicated incident process review, you can reflect the patterns that you see across multiple incidents. And also reflect on the incident process itself. How efficient was it to handle all those topics? So this also helps us to focus on learnings for the gray zone events here that are not quite clear, and identify gaps in the process to handle them. So let's take one example. If I reveal I have constantly incidents that are escalated because there was simply no better choice in my escalation process, so I just fired the incident to get the things done, then there are two things that you can do. One is, the first is reflect the incident classification. Back in the times, quite some time ago, we had incident classification with 3 severities, means there were 2 patterns that we have identified. With 3 severities, pattern 1 was, default was in the middle. If people were not sure, it's not super critical, but critical, it's default 2, very easy decision. The other pattern was with 3, and the severity 3 was also defined like okay, there must be something critically happening. We had those gray zone events. Means there were discussions, hey, is this an incident, is this not, this is a SEF3. In many cases, we just did it and then started to debate. So what we did based on this review is we created 4 categories with a broader coverage, with looser but clear definitions that makes it easy to do a fast triaging, and also applied different escalation and communication policies for the SEF1 and 2 versus 3 and 4. So yes, we have a bit more SEF4 now these days. But again, it's not bad having the incident, the impact is the bad thing. And with the differentiation, we can also run it with a bit lower overhead. So that helped a lot to address those 2 patterns. Yeah? With 4, you also don't have the, by default, 2 aspect. Very easy and quick win. Yeah. The second thing is, think of the non-incident support channels. So, as mentioned, if an incident is declared, if there is no better choice, then make a better choice. So in our case, we have a bug process, and that's very common across all engineering organizations. But sometimes it's just not a bug for an engineering team. So we have another process called request for assistance, where people can just request, hey, I need the help of team X. We have this issue there. And we have clear timelines and also options to escalate on those type of things. And that makes it easier to deal also with issues that do not qualify as incidents, but still have some kind of urgency and escalation option. That helps filling also the gap between the is it an incident or what is the alternative path. Yeah. Let's talk about the not our fault incidents again, and especially the pattern where the customer did something wrong and the area of product feedback. So if your product looks like this, maybe not in the first part, but on the left part, it can really get accidents. So if your product looks like this, then it's no surprise that your users are doing something wrong. Let's make that more tangible. What can we do about it? So some patterns that can be taken out of those it's not our fault events. And some might sound obvious, but sometimes we forget about the basics. So let me summarize. Impact does not equal fault. That means just because it's not your fault doesn't mean it's not your problem. Think like a customer. If they misunderstood something, then ask yourself how can the system allow that? Yeah? How can that happen? Build validation checks with guardrails and config simulators for critical user configs to prevent fragile situations. So identify those parts that when there is a misconfiguration that can blow up the thing for the customer, maybe not for the service availability, but for the customer itself. Shared responsibility. Empower customers with better tooling, not just with documentation. Design for misuse. If a small mistake causes a big outage, then your system or your product isn't simply resilient enough. Clarity, ambiguity in the documentation can be like similar harmful as bugs could be. And speaking of documentation, breaking changes should not be buried like into changelog, but also need to be visible and actionable. So not all of these aspects might be applied for every kind of product, and there might be others as well. But the most important thing is for those parts of aspects where there's a strong opportunity to improve the product, bring your product managers into the post-incident review phase or the post-mortem. Not just the engineering team or the engineering leads, but also the product managers. There's a super good opportunity to improve also the product itself. Okay, so let's recap. We have explored the 4 patterns of unincidents, the no-CI, the near-miss, the fear-miss, and the not our fault, and touched areas around mindset, structure, and fact-based decision. So with this, it's time to wrap it up. So to incident or not to incident is sometimes a limiting perspective. Instead, focus on asking what happened and what can we learn out of this. And this approach encourages a continuous improvement, open communication, and also drives a better organizational learning. And with this, I'm open for questions and learnings. Thank you.